Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show, highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyles, community, and neighborhood. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. And Dorothy, welcome back from vacation.
Thanks, Bill.
We missed you.
I'm sure you did. I'm surprised the building's still standing, to be honest with you.
It is still standing, but we still missed you.
I'm sure.
We're in the middle of summer, and we are... How many times have you and I spoken in the past, and you've heard me say, we talked about all the changing demographics in Moore County and how much has gone on in the last 10 or 15 years?
I can't count that high.
Right. When I moved here in 1999, it was a different world than it is today.
Yes.
And with all the young families coming into town, if you just look at the downtown area of Southern Pines, you see a completely different makeup. But there's a magic to Southern Pines, and there's a history about Southern Pines that we're going to be focusing on today. And we are privileged to be speaking with Abigail Dowd, who is the Executive Director of the Weymouth Center, and she's also going to be joined by a real estate broker and friend of mine, Renee LaFleur, who was a business owner in the downtown area of Southern Pines. And we want to talk about the Weymouth Center, its place in our history, and its place in our future. And before we even segue into the Weymouth Center, we want to welcome you, Abigail.
Thank you.
It's a delight to have you.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, and Renee, we're glad you could come and join us as well.
Thank you, Bill.
You're a Southern Pines resident.
I am.
And Abigail, you're a Southern Pines or Moore County native, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yes, Moore County native.
I don't know you well, but I know of you. Over the years, I've read a lot about you. I remember you first when you were on the town council. Mm-hmm. And you're also a musician.
That's right.
You're also a passionate advocate for Southern Pines, in particular the Weymouth Center.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
You grew up here as a child?
Mm-hmm, I did. I went to Union Pines High School, graduated in '99 when you...
Oh my goodness!
When you moved here.
Thanks for sharing that. The last 15 years have been you've been here and you've not been here, and you're back again.
I'm back.
Can you give us a little bit of background as to how you've evolved since high school?
Sure. Well, after high school, I went to Chapel Hill and was there for 4 years for college, and thought that I would run off to New England and get some fancy job in Boston or some big city.
Right.
And instead found myself back in Southern Pines running an art school, and got involved with the planning board. I had studied city planning at Chapel Hill and anthropology, so it was just natural to get involved with city planning. Served on the planning board and then served on the town council, and had this opportunity sort of fall in my lap from Florence, Italy. And having always lived in Moore County, with the exception of Chapel Hill, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity. Mm-hmm. I was there for about 3 months and then ended up moving to Maine. And I stayed in Maine for about 5 years and got my dose of New England when Weymouth called and said, we've decided to hire our first executive director. Mm-hmm. And would you consider interviewing for the position? Mm-hmm. And it was really, there was no question that Weymouth was home. As much as Southern Pines is home, Weymouth is even more so that central home for me. So,
to so many people who live here, who love Southern Pines, who grew up here, they know the Weymouth Center, the Weymouth House, and the Boyd family, and they're very prideful in their knowledge. Renee, there are so many people here who have moved to Southern Pines in the last 7 or 8 years and just think it's a really cool house where people get married, or they have society events right off Connecticut Avenue. So there are a lot of people here who don't seem to have the knowledge about the Weymouth Center.
And they don't understand its accessibility, that they can actually go inside and they can view the grounds, and that it's open to the public.
Right. When the Weymouth Center spoke to you, they hired you as an executive director. What is your mission? What was the mission you were setting out to accomplish? Because you've been there for about a year now?
Mm-hmm. A little over a year. I started in March of 2014.
Right.
And growing up here, and my grandfather and my grandparents were good friends with the Boyds, and my grandfather had been the groundskeeper.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And so when Mrs. Boyd, if there was a leak in something in the plumbing, my grandfather would run in and he would fix it, and he would care for the grounds. And so my father also grew up, at Weymouth. So to me, it really felt I had that family connection that I didn't learn about till much later when I was older, and I'd found Weymouth on my own. But the mission was really to share Weymouth with everybody else, to really hone in on all of these personal connections that people had with Weymouth and let them own Weymouth as their own home, but also educate them about the significance of Weymouth, both locally and statewide, and do more from Weymouth's perspective of reaching out to the community and not just waiting for the community to come to Weymouth for a wedding or a social event, so that we were really immersed in Southern Pines. As you said, the demographic is really changing.
So to the real estate broker, Weymouth is not just a neighborhood like Sandhurst or Highland Trails or Yadkin. It's a lot more than that, isn't it?
And that's absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the best place for a newcomer or somebody who's lived here all their life to come and learn about the history of not just Southern Pines, but if they're interested in literature, that's really it was sort of the Southern literary renaissance started at Weymouth. So there's a whole lot of history at Weymouth that's the only place there is to learn it. Just wandering the grounds or immersing yourself in the house and coming to events, slowly you start to learn all of these really interesting facts and people who have moved in and out of Southern Pines.
Tell us about the grounds. What makes it so special?
In 1903, when James Boyd first came here, and he was a coal magnate, he also had ties with the railroad. So he comes in on the train and sees his daughter was with him, and there was a malfunction. They get stuck here in Southern Pines, and they decide to take a carriage ride, and they go up to where Weymouth is. And the daughter, Helen, she sees the turpentine workers cutting the trees, felling the trees for timber and tapping the trees for turpentine. And she pleads with her father to save the trees and says, you have to save this land, otherwise it'll be destroyed, and these trees are so beautiful. And as every good father would do, of course, he buys 1,200 acres for his daughter. And that becomes their winter residence. They lived in Pennsylvania. And so today, this is one of the oldest stands of virgin longleaf pines on the planet. There were once about 90 million acres of longleaf pines along the eastern coast, and now there's only 3 million acres. So what we have at Weymouth through Weymouth Woods, and then the 26 acres we have, is really it's a gem of these virgin longleaf pines. So that's one part of our mission, is to preserve the grounds as an estate. And what makes the grounds so special to us as residents of Southern Pines is that when James Boyd bought the land, rather than call it his winter retreat where he would keep it safe to himself, he had his nephew, Alfred Yeomans, come in. He was a landscape architect, and he laid out carriage trails, and it was open to the public as a public park and preserve. And he really saw it as a preserve even then, but made it accessible to the public to enjoy. And today we still have the gardens and grounds laid out the way Alfred Yeomans laid them out. And we have amazing dirt gardeners who...
Yeah, you do.
They are just phenomenal. They were out there today in this heat.
And the grounds are open to the public.
They are. Anybody can come and enjoy the grounds.
It's good, because if it was not open to the public, I would have been arrested for trespassing a lot.
I think a lot of people would.
Well, I'm privileged that I live right across the street, but in 1999 when I bought my house, I had no idea about Weymouth. I couldn't even see my house. It was all covered with wisteria and trees. I just got lucky. And today, I can look across the street and walk over there, and the grounds are breathtaking.
They truly are.
Yeah.
And there's always something in bloom, and to know that it's all volunteers that maintain the gardens and grounds. We became a nonprofit in '79, and it's mostly been an all-volunteer run organization. And the gardens and grounds, that's what really draws people in. To see people come running in the evening with their dog, or kids having a picnic. Somebody sent me a text yesterday. They live just down the street, and they sent me a text of their son reading a book under the sycamore tree. The same sycamore tree where Sherwood Anderson wrote that he was sitting under 100 years ago. It's a really cool connection. But the gardens and grounds, they just have that. There's something special. You just feel it.
When you drive down Connecticut or May Street, you see signs. James Boyd, he was a prolific writer as well. But I think most people know him as a writer, and you mentioned he was a coal magnate.
So it's a little confusing because his grandfather's name was James.
Oh, okay.
And it was his grandfather who came down on the train.
Okay.
And the land was supposed to pass to his son, John. And it did when he died, but then John died shortly thereafter, and it passed to his two grandsons.
Okay.
And his grandson's name's also James. And James was the writer, and it was James and his wife, Katherine, James the writer, who built the current house, Weymouth.
Gotcha.
But then the grandfather, who they had named it Weymouth after Weymouth, England.
And the Boyds also donated a lot of land to the town of Southern Pines?
To the state, actually.
Okay.
And it was the first nature preserve in the state of North Carolina. Katherine Boyd, she was quite the philanthropist. When James died, her husband, the writer, when he died in 1944, Katherine managed Weymouth, and it became hers. And her son died in the early 60s. His name was Daniel, and he was out in California and died in a motorcycle accident. She wanted to preserve the woods the way that they were when he played in them as a child. And so she donated 400 acres to the state of North Carolina. And they had to figure out what to do with it and what it meant to have a nature preserve at that time.
Right.
And that was the birth of Weymouth Woods. That's why it's called Weymouth Woods. And it was a gift from the Boyd family, really to all of us, but especially to the children, so that they would have those same woods to play in that Daniel had.
The Weymouth Center is known as the Arts Center of Moore County, but it's 2015, and we're against a backdrop of a different economic time than we had pre-2000, a different world we live in. Arts budgets in schools have been cut. You have a task in front of you, I guess, because you rely on private donations. It's a tough time, but you're also trying to preserve something that is not just a piece of it is Southern Pines. Right? She's smiling because she said, "Oh, he gets it." I think
exactly. That's exactly why I'm smiling.
So, Renee, I don't know if you were here when she was on the town council, but I have to digress for just a minute. So I didn't know a lot of the people on the town council at the time, but I would know what I read. Her name was the most prominent mentioned. Why? Because she was on the side of, trying to preserve, not trying to expand so much, not trying to lose the fabric of what Southern Pines is. And today, 2015, you look around, the landscape has changed. I'm not going to say for the better, or I'm not going to say it's changing for the better. So your mission now, you're almost more passionate about what you're trying to save, because now you have to protect and defend it.
Well, and I appreciate so much how you worded it, because that was really my position on the town council.
Right.
Sometimes a misunderstood one, but and it was always shocking to come back and see how the area was changing, and Weymouth is really a great place to educate first and foremost about why this place is so special. Even though as a child I picked up pine cones and raked pine straw, there's really something special about these pine trees. And Weymouth is a great place with Weymouth Woods to educate about why that's so special. And Weymouth is that place where you can come and get that spirit that we all fall in love with. When you came in 1999, and the older I got, the less I wanted to move away, the way you do when you're a kid, and you realize as you travel, this is a pretty special place, and there's that spirit, and it's very, very strong at Weymouth, I think, because the Boyds brought so much of that here and saw it.
Do you remember that movie? I'll ask you about the Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Of course.
I think I've mentioned it on the show a couple of times, and it's like Southern Pines is like Bedford Falls from that movie. Did you see the movie? Every Christmas?
Yes.
Okay. And there was a charm, and there was a small-town ambiance, and there was a movie called Doc Hollywood. I don't know if you remember that, with Michael J. Fox in this southern town where they had the Squash Blossom Festival. Well, that to me is it gets what Southern Pines is all about, or what we hope it's all about. And there are very few places around that are like it. I mean, it's a great place to wake up in the morning.
It really is.
Right?
Yeah, There's not a lot of economic opportunity in preservation, but there is in development. So a lot of towns will go the other way towards development. But I think, especially being a mother, the value of preservation is really, I mean, you can't put a price on it. It might not benefit a lot of people. You might not be able to build strip malls on it, but you can't put a value on history and, keeping ecosystems and things that I can show my daughter 100 years from now, hopefully, the way that they were there from 100 years before. So,
well, that sense of wonder that a child gets in nature that you can't replicate in something else, to have that as a child is such a gift. And the fact that Helen Boyd Dull, after the Civil War, we saw the turpentine industry and the timber industry as the way for us to make money because the South was so poor. And that was really all that we had and all the people who were here had. But the Boyd family had the means to preserve the land, and they did, and that investment in the land, rather than just doing the fastest means to an end, the fastest way to make money. Look at what we have now in this economy that grew around the beauty of this place that they had the foresight to save. And I think we have to remember that the quickest way to make money may also be the quickest way to kill what you have.
Yeah, you're a great spokesperson, I will tell you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to come back in the second set. We're speaking with the Executive Director of the Weymouth Center, Abigail Dowd, and my guest, Renee LaFleur. This is All Things Moore County.
Carolina in my mind. Katherine, she's a silver sun. You best walk her way and watch it shine. Watch her watch the morning come. I'm going to Carolina in my mind. There'll be no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around.
We're back in our second set of All Things Moore County, speaking with Executive Director of the Weymouth Center, Abigail Dowd. You're a great speaker, I was saying at the end of the first set. You really are. You speak with a lot of credibility. You have spoken recently at Professional Women's Network, Lady Bedford's Tea Parlor. You've addressed some of the Rotary groups. You're on a mission talking about James Boyd, talking about Katherine, talking about the Weymouth Center. Can we talk a little bit more about those two individuals, because they were both very iconic?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Yeah. I don't know if you just hold court when you get up and speak and people in the audience take notes, or if you give multiple choice tests at the end, but I mean, Renee and I are sitting here and we're mesmerized as you're going back in time and recreating something for us. Because there are a lot of people who don't know enough about the Weymouth Center.
Right.
And that's kind of what your mission is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that we don't know is because the Boyds were very good Presbyterians. Some people may not know that Brownson Presbyterian Church is named after James Boyd, the writer's aunt, mother, Eleanor. Her minister's name was Marcus Brownson. And the Boyds were a very strong Presbyterian family up in Harrisburg, and they convinced him to come and move here, and Brownson is named after him. And so James Boyd, who at the time was this well-known author, the New York Times heralded him when he died in 1944. Life magazine said that his book Drums was one of the most significant books written between 1925 and 1944. 1925 being said to be the greatest year of American literature. The Great Gatsby was published that year, and several others. So he was very well known at the time. And when he would interview with newspaper reporters, they would almost get frustrated because he was so humble. He just, that's what I do. But that was how he was raised. And he was a man of means. So James Boyd wanted to serve his country, to fight in the war, and he couldn't because he had poor health. And eventually he was able to go over and drive an ambulance in Italy, just like Ernest Hemingway.
That's
but
right.
he was sent back and because of his poor health. And he decided to move down to Weymouth permanently. It had been the family winter home. So he moved here because he said it was a great place to write. And though he was a man of means, he was raised that you don't sit idly. You must do something. So he became a writer, and he wrote Drums, which was published in 1925. And N.C. Wyeth, the illustrator, illustrated the second edition of that in 1928. And if you go downtown to where folks pay their water bill, and the old town library next to the post office, there's two paintings flanking that room, and those are the illustrations from Drums, painted by N.C. Wyeth, and they were a gift of Katherine Boyd's to the library. So that's why they're in that building. And then the frontispiece is in a room around the corner, which is known as the Boyd Room. It's that great room where the council has their agenda meetings. It's a beautiful wooden room.
That's right.
So James Boyd wrote Drums, and before Drums, it was historic fiction was really seen as this romanticized genre of literature that wasn't taken very seriously, just even more so than Gone with the Wind, just that glamorized, romanticized history. And he was so meticulous in his detail in the book that it's said to have revolutionized historic fiction and really set it as a serious genre of literature. And his publisher was Maxfield Perkins, and Maxfield Perkins was also the editor for Thomas Wolfe and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Sherwood Anderson and John Galsworthy and a whole slew of famous authors who visited Weymouth, who would come to Weymouth to talk with the Boyds about literature, and the Boyds were great, great hosts. There are a lot of stories about these famous writers at Weymouth. And it was said, as I mentioned in the earlier set, that it was Jonathan Daniels said that Weymouth was where the Southern literary renaissance began. So James thought that all writers had a responsibility to freedom of speech and intellectualism, and during the Second World War he started the Free Company to do a radio show to talk about free speech and got all of these writers involved. And after that ended, he bought the Pilot newspaper to really continue that mission, to use the power of the pen for his civic and social responsibility. So when he died in 1944, he was giving a lecture to the British officers up at Princeton, and his heart failed him finally for the last time. And Katherine was here in Southern Pines, and she maintained the estate, and rather than selling the newspaper, she decided to run it herself. She was the editor and the publisher, and she had a column, and she ran it for 24 years until she sold it to Sam Reagan for a token. Because she liked his politics. But Katherine had a very interesting background. Her father was dear friends with Grover Cleveland. He was Grover Cleveland's secretary before he became president, and then when he became president, he was his secretary and then eventually Secretary of War. And Grover Cleveland was the first president to be married in office. And so he took his bride, a young woman, Frances, and Katherine Boyd's mother was sort of the nurturer to her, the one that taught her how to be a great host as
Really?
a first lady.
Wow.
So Katherine Boyd grew up with, in this Gilded Age Washington society with a mother who taught the first lady how to be a first lady. So you can only imagine what she passed on to Katherine, her own daughter. So Katherine was a great host, and the Boyds were, both of them, they entertained a lot of people. And then when James died in 44, she packed up her ball gowns, and she sort of went back to this New England sensibility. They always summered, the Lamonts, Catherine's maiden name was Lamont, summered in Sorrento, Maine. And they talk about how her mother would host these great parties in Washington and then go to Sorrento, Maine and hammer nails just with everybody else on this summer home.
Right.
So after James died, Katherine, she just became very devoted to the paper, very just almost that New England sensibility. She didn't wear the fancy ball gowns. She wasn't presumptuous in any way. She devoted herself to civic good. She started the Moore County maternity, I guess it wasn't corporation, but the Moore County maternity ward. She and James had both been very instrumental in starting the Moore County Hospital here, or benefactors to the hospital. There's a Boyd wing at the hospital. It's much dwarfed now, but at the time it was quite significant. And then she also gave 30 acres of land to start Peanic Village. So in a sense, Weymouth gave birth to Peanic. She gave the library wing, the Boyd wing, to the library. She was very instrumental with supporting the North Carolina Symphony when it was starting, and the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem. She was just really involved in bettering, especially for children, bringing music to children. She started the concerts for Moore County students to hear the symphony, which continues today. That was started by Katherine Boyd. And then when she died, she left Weymouth to Sandhills Community College. At the time, the horticulture students were actually using the Weymouth grounds. They were just getting started, and the Weymouth grounds were a great place to go out. And so Katherine, when she passed away, and Sandhills was just starting, she said, "Take Weymouth. I'll leave it to Sandhills so that you can use it." But it just wasn't practical enough. There's too far of a commute. So when they did sell the land and the Friends of Weymouth got together to buy that from Sandhills, the money that Sandhills made was used to do the library there at Sandhills, and that's why it's the Katherine Boyd Library at Sandhills. So you see that Boyd name creep up every once in a while, but they were very quiet about it.
The imprint that they made on Moore County is indelible. I mean, it's here. It's not going to go away.
Right.
They probably would not have participated on Facebook if they were alive today, but all the comments I heard about her speech at the Professional Women's Network posted on Facebook said they had no idea. They were mesmerized, as we are. They had no idea about the texture of the history, and I think that was the impression that you made at that lunch. And if people got an opportunity to hear you speak, you have the ability to make people see things in a that expression, you know what you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So that's kind of like the area where you would be able to give people that aha moment, and I think that's what she's doing.
I think it gives people a sense of pride when they learn about all of this, and you not only appreciate where you're from, but it's not just a little railroad town that that people sometimes say, oh, it's a little railroad town and there's a hospital there. And
right, exactly.
There's so much more. So,
well, I have to give credit. I have a friend, Ray Owen, and Ray is a historian, and especially when I was on the council and involved, and I always liked to walk around town. Every Sunday it was my routine to just walk through all of the neighborhoods. And he would walk with me, and we'd walk together, and he would tell me these stories. Not everything, I've sort of been digging around since I became the director at Weymouth, and the stories just get better and better and better. But to have somebody tell those stories to me in that storyteller way, it means so much to me to hear that the Professional Women's Network and other folks get that same sense, because Weymouth is all about storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many great writers in residence, and James Boyd was a writer, and I only make half of this stuff up. It's it's all about storytelling and making it interesting so that you want to pass it on, sort of that oral history component that unfortunately we don't get with Facebook. But
I thought I was lucky because I live across from the Campbell field, the ball field, and the Weymouth house. I said, oh, well, I'll never have a house built in my front yard. But in truth, I live in a very special neck of the woods that I can get up every morning and look across the street and see what you're bringing to life, which is great. I can't wait to go home now tonight.
That's so nice.
It is nice,
and
isn't it?
that field is just so beautiful by the Campbell house, which was James Boyd's brother's home. Jackson Boyd built the Campbell house, and then the Campbell family had it, and they left it to Southern Pines. But it was James at what we know as the Weymouth house, and then Jackson across the street at the Campbell house.
More aha moments.
Wow.
They're everywhere, the Boyds. They really are. They were just very quiet about it.
Yeah. We're going to break and come back in the third set. We're speaking about the Weymouth Center with Abigail Boyd. This is All Things Moore County.
Dark and silently last night, think I might have heard the highway calling. Geese in flight and dogs at light. It's been a holy host of others standing around me. Still I'm on the dark side of the moon. And it looks
When did you move here? How long ago?
2010.
And what did you know about Southern Pines when you moved here? Just a nice family neighborhood, a place to live?
I actually drove through from base, so I drove down Indiana,
Right,
passed by Weymouth,
right,
and just went downtown and said, yes, okay.
right.
Because my first
So many-
experience was Fayetteville, and I thought, and then I came here, I could do this. And this is what I said, call Mom, I said, I found a little fairy town. Little fairies live here.
That.
Right.
I said, fairies live here, Mom, I'm coming here.
Right.
And she was like, what?
Yeah, my kid sister who lives in New York City, she's a writer. She comes down here and she just feels like she is on a game board. She loves Asheville. She loves Southern Pines. She feels like it's like the antithesis of an urban area. But now there's so much more that the area offers.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
At what cost?
And I think that's kind of goes back a few years with you. And she's rolling us, so I didn't realize Dorothy started us talking, so we're back on our third set at the same time.
Great.
And no one said anything incriminating, so no one has to worry. I want to digress one more minute, because then I want you to talk about Weymouth today
Okay.
and tomorrow and going forward. So we talked a little bit about a few years ago with what's happening with development in the area. So as a real estate person, I think, and I tell people this all the time, and Renee, you can agree or not, all the developments, all the commercialization that's going on is only making the areas like Weymouth and areas like that more valuable, because there are fewer and far between. And I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, where the only grass we had to cut was the grass between the cracks in the pavement. So every time I wake up here in the morning, I'm like, I feel blessed to live here. And then to live in an area like Weymouth or the Sandhurst area or the downtown area, it's only getting stronger and stronger. You're very active in the town as well. It's one of the few towns that they don't allow franchises. Every retail operation is an independent retailer, which is a challenge.
It's
you
hard
can
work.
speak from. It's a lot of hard work.
It's hard work. It takes the entire city really to keep local, stay local, spend their money local. On the stores, the restaurants, everything. And Weymouth is no different than that. I think that the local support is what keeps it alive. It's not from tourists. So everybody needs to be involved. And I mean, when I had a store downtown, that was the challenge, was how do you keep the new people who are used to the strip malls, how do you keep them local? And it was because we had to offer them something special, and we had to be personable. And I think that's the same with Weymouth.
Right.
Her comment when she came here and she saw the town, and she just said, okay, this is it. So she had that magic moment. So there's something magical about this area, because I've heard that from a lot of different people. And you probably, and I do now too, I take pride in the fact that people come here and they take a look at the downtown and they look at the Victorian homes and they move east towards Fort Bragg Road and they see the beautiful neighborhoods and they see Weymouth and they go, yeah, this is where I want to raise my family. This is where I want my kids to have memories. That's not an uncommon occurrence, is it?
No.
Right.
And being a native, you don't see it.
Right.
And I was probably in my 20s.
You see it. You see it.
I see
you
it now.
appreciate it every day. Yeah.
But I remember going to Paris and thinking, oh, I'm this bumpkin from Southern Pines, and here I've made it to Paris, and that's, I thought that I was so cosmopolitan. And then I came home, and Paris in the springtime is supposed to be so beautiful. And I guess I left right before the azaleas and the dogwoods bloomed, and I came back at the height of it. And I thought, oh my goodness, I saw the town with new eyes. It was, Paris has nothing on Southern Pines.
Right.
And, you start appreciating that. And then when you learn the stories that go with it, it's special.
A couple of weeks ago, we had Skylar on and Katherine. They came on and they spoke about the summer series that you're doing today, Sounds on the Ground. And about a couple of other things about what Weymouth is doing going forward and how they're also appealing to a younger demographic. I heard you both speaking at the break about the writer's workshop for kids, and that's something that your daughter's only 15 months old, but down the road...
Absolutely. There's, you only usually get to go to the local library. So tell us a little bit about the children's writing camp.
The Write On Camp starts next week, first week of August, and it's a 3-day, half-day workshop for kids. We have 4 great instructors, and the kids do storytelling, they write poetry, they write songs, and it's held in the great room, so the space is great, and it's got that creative energy. And the instructors really lead them in teaching them how fun it is to write. And they work hard, but it's not, the hard assignment like it might be if you have 55 minutes to teach a whole classroom of students. We have about 15. And we do it every year. It's for grades 3 through 5. And our goal is going forward as we involve more writers and more instructors to be able to do it for more ages, so that if you're in the 5th grade, you have something to look forward to after that. And we also have the Moore County Writers Competition that is held every year at Weymouth, and that starts from kindergarten up to, or 1st grade, up to adult, and each category, nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. And that's always amazing to have the kids stand up and read their work. The winners get to read sections.
Do both of you remember your 3rd grade teacher?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those impressions, when you're in 3rd, 4th, and 2nd grade, you never forget them.
Never.
So if the kids are in a writer's workshop, the Weymouth Center has a chance to create an impression. Whether the child becomes a writer or not, they might just get an appreciation for writing as they get older. They never forget at that age. We forget that, those kids, they're not going to remember. They will remember. So the Weymouth Center could actually be in a mentoring position with kids and helping to cultivate some interests.
Right, and I think that would make Katherine Boyd so proud to know that there are these children who are being inspired that way. That was her vision for Weymouth, was a place where men and women could come and be creative.
Your website has a lot of information about some of your programs and things that can be done, and it's open to the public. It's so beyond the weddings, beyond the socials. People can go on the website, which is, by the way,
it's weymouthcenter.org.
Okay, and they can do their own intuitive. They can look at and do their own reading and investigation and reach out to you. Somebody could just contact the Weymouth Center. You have a wedding planner. How does that work? Do people come in? How do you set that up
for a wedding?
Yeah.
Right now, if you call Hope, you call our main line, and you can get that from the website. And we are redoing our website, so we hope to have that launched in mid-August. They call Hope and check dates, and then work with Alex and myself to coordinate the wedding planning. Most people have their own wedding planner, and right now, Weymouth is, you rent the venue, and people have the freedom to work with the vendors that are on our preferred vendor list and choose their caterer and their florist and their wedding planner. And a lot of the weddings are unique. They're not all the same, and it depends on how large the wedding is. But, they use the gardens and the grounds and the house for the reception, and it's quite magical. But calling Hope and then working together with Alex is how it's been working for a long time, and so far it's worked quite well.
As a layman who sits back and reads a paper, goes online, tries to stay in touch with the community as much as I can, I'm impressed with the concert series, because that's a different reach than the Weymouth Center has done in the past, because you're appealing to all the new demographics that are coming through, because you're doing the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. So you're bringing out all the baby boomers, you're bringing out the millennials, the Gen X.
Right. Oh, it's fantastic. And then all of the people who have always been involved at Weymouth, they come too. And, it almost feels so European to see so many generations together on the grounds, and you have the older folks, 70 and over, dancing, and then to see the younger folks who are 7 and under dancing, all to the same music. We had the food vendors. We're going to have more food trucks at this event, and the next one in August, the wine cellar, the Southern Pines Brewing Company.
Okay. So you network pretty well in Southern Pines, so you know the people to read. So where did the idea come from for the concert series? Just curious.
When I first started here at Weymouth last year, and everybody I talked to said, you need to do a concert series. And I didn't think that we would be able to bring that to fruition for a number of years. And then I met Skylar, and she said, yeah, we need a concert series, and I'll do that. So she put together the young affiliates, and a whole group of them have been coming together and working extraordinarily hard to pull it off, and they've done a great job. It's really, in my first year, I've realized the power of volunteers. And when that many people get together to do something, it's almost not as hard as it seems, because so many people are involved. And then the community has really supported us. First Bank has been a sponsor, Peanut Village has been a sponsor, and a lot of great people coming out to volunteer.
What is the Woman of Weymouth, the tapas with Southern cuisine?
Tapas is on August 13th, and it's going to be catered by Elliott's, and the Women of Weymouth do this every year. They do, throughout the house, each room sort of has a different theme. Well, the theme is Southern cuisine, but Tex-Mex might be in one room, and Charleston or barbecue in another, Creole. it's wine pairings and great food and great company, and hopefully the weather will be nice and there'll be tables outside. It's a lot of fun. I went last year for the first time. And
With all you have to offer, off the record, I have to ask, so how's the fundraising going? Because it is a private organization.
It is.
And we need to recruit a whole new generation of people, and that's, you're the catalyst, you're the go-between.
Right. It is. It's a big job because it's so easy to take Weymouth for granted because, as you say, it's literally in our backyards.
Right.
And my first goal when I came on last year was to educate people what is Weymouth and what is our mission. And our mission is to preserve the gardens and grounds, and the Longleaf Pine Forest as a nature park and preserve, and the house as a cultural and literary center. And you're giving me the opportunity to do that to a broader audience, and I've appreciated all the people who've allowed me to come and tell these stories.
Right.
And now I have to go one step farther and remind people that this isn't supported by, not financially, the town doesn't pay to upkeep the Weymouth Gardens and Grounds, and it's not a branch of the Arts Council. There's a lot of people who think that we get our funding from the state or the local government, and we don't. It's membership. To have people join and support Weymouth, it's a great way to stay involved and find out volunteer opportunities and the events. The weddings and rentals are another great source of revenue for us.
Yeah.
So thinking of Weymouth, if you're going to do a business function, conventions or anything like that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the membership, on how you
Sure.
become a member and what you get? And
We're about to kick off our membership drive in August, and so with the launch of our new website, folks will be able to go online and become members. We have a new young affiliate rate this year, so we're encouraging our younger folks to join. I believe it's $40 for individuals and $80 for family. And then we have an individual rate that's $75 for individuals and $150 for families, and then we have our sustaining members that are $250 and over. And the membership, we have member prices and non-member prices, so there's discounts on events. And we've worked with the Country Bookshop, and now all Weymouth members will receive a 10% discount at the Country Bookshop. So it's a great way to support Weymouth. If you go out and jog in the evening, or it's a great place to have a picnic on a Sunday, making sure that that's always there.
I think you should do a professional video of you at the Weymouth Center. I think you should walk through the hallowed halls and talk and do a tutorial. So I do.
I think that'd be a great idea.
You will bring it to life, just sitting here in the studio. But if it were done with a backdrop of the Weymouth Center, you'd be a YouTube sensation. That would be a very compelling, I think, to a lot of people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the confidence.
Well, but people are visual, right?
Absolutely.
So they want to see the pic. We know in our business.
UNC. I can see her watching UNC, the way that they do about the Vanderbilt, and they take someone
That's
around
right.
and they do the history, and you were just always captivated. That's how I feel like you could reproduce this for the Weymouth Center.
And it's a coincidence that I'm suggesting that, and I'm being told we only have 2 minutes to go, which is a shame. But we might even want to do a radio show over there for you.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Wouldn't that be fun?
Bring in some of the people, some of the volunteers, or some of the people that are instrumental in being a catalyst with you in propelling the Weymouth Center the way you are.
Some of our writers in residence, that's our oldest program, and we have some incredible writers who very quietly come in and out of Weymouth, and nobody knows that they're there really, but they have a 2-week stay at Weymouth to just write, and some of them may have incredible stories to tell that would be really fun to share on a radio show.
And if people would just, on a weekend, after they go to Betsy's Crepes or after they're downtown with their kids, at the farmer's market, if they were to just take a walk over to the grounds and just walk the grounds with their family, they would be sold. I've had the privilege of doing that, and you're in awe, and you're looking around, and you're almost like in a Wyeth portrait.
It's true,
isn't it? But people, I think, can be intimidated too, and think they drive by. Oh, there's a private club or it's a social organization that I'll just drive by, but that's not the case.
No, not at all. And it's so beautiful that it's almost intimidating, and you think, I shouldn't am allowed to be here.
Right.
And the gardens and grounds are open to the public.
Right.
Well, in the house, I didn't know you could go in the house every day. I just learned that, and I've been here for
10 to
7
2.
years.
And upstairs is the North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame. We were the first state to have a Literary Hall of Fame, and Weymouth is where it's housed in James Boyd's study.
I was looking forward to this show. Renee, I'm glad that you could join us.
Thank you.
I wanted you to meet Abigail.
It's a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. I'm glad you were here.
Yeah.
Me too.
And you can be a transformational figure here as doing what you're doing, and I think maybe you don't realize it, but I think you are. So I wish you luck. We'd like to get some more information at our office about the memberships too, because we are the first line of contact for a lot of people who are new to the area.
Mm-hmm.
And they are looking for things to do. People come from all over the country, and they have a spirit of volunteerism.
Right.
They want to take part. So maybe we could get some literature from you that we could share with our clients.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to pass that on. And I so much appreciate this opportunity.
Abigail Dowd, thanks for coming in and joining us. I was looking forward to it. Now I know why.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
We will speak to you next week. We were talking all about the Weymouth Center. It's one of the most, if not the most, iconic cultural institution in Moore County. It defines a lot of people who have grown up here and will hopefully define the lives of a lot of people who have decided to call Southern Pines and Moore County home. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Can you hear the pines whispering? Can you hear the silence in between these words I speak to you? It's there you'll find the meaning of this place. Come on, children, rise up. Don't let 'em tear you down. Come on, children, rise up. Don't let 'em tear you down. Can you hear the branches strum their refrain? Rise up to heaven, tall above the flames, and stronger than the wounds that bleed them dry. Stronger than you or I. Come on, children, rise up. Don't let 'em tear you down. Come on, children, rise up. Don't let 'em tear you down. Can you hear their silent symphony?